It was eerie. And we both remember getting out of the car to fiddle around with the bonnet. Couldn't find anything wrong with the engine.
Extraordinary story. Welcome back. Our next guest, Ros Reynolds, believes that she was abducted by aliens. It's what she believes. This is how her fateful night began when she and her boyfriend set off to visit friends in Norfolk, some 2 hours' drive away.
It's just starting to get dark. As we were driving along, a bank of horseshoe-shaped lights suddenly came from my side where I was sitting in the passenger seat. And it zipped over the top of us about 2 or 3 times. And then it eventually settled to match our speed. It was like a big white ball. You could see into it. It's very bright, but it didn't hurt your eyes to look at. And suddenly the car stopped dead. It was like in the middle of nowhere, and it was just sitting there. It hadn't landed. It was just like hovering, floating. There was no sound, no wind, no noise. It was eerie. And we both remember getting out of the car to fiddle around with the bonnet. Couldn't find anything wrong with the engine. We continued the journey. It suddenly just shot heavenwards. We finally got to friends. They'd been expecting us at 10 o'clock, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was what happened afterwards that I realised there was something else going on.
Extraordinary. Well, Ros Reynolds, who claims to have been abducted by aliens, and Jenny Randalls, who's a UFO expert, join us now. Ros, you lost, what, 3 hours?
2 or 3 hours, yeah.
Of your life?
Yes.
And you really believe that you were captured by aliens and you were taken away by them?
It's more than believe. At the time, it was ever so strange. The next day, I mean, this was like a long time ago, and in this modern-day society, they don't seem to accept you going up saying, excuse me, I've just been abducted by an alien.
Indeed.
At the time, I didn't even realise that I'd been taken. I just had the missing time, and we sort of never thought about it.
Sure, because when you got to your friend's house, they said, where have you been?
That's right, and we sort of looked at each other and thought, well, I'm not going to mention what I've seen.
Did you both talk about it to one another, though?
It was a nervous reaction. We sort of looked at each other and yes, we mentioned it, but that was a
You didn't want to know?
Yeah, you know, it's the sort of thing that's, you just shut away. Something has happened, you just shut it away at the back of your mind.
But this all came out, through hypnosis?
Hypnosis later on. Well, at first it was because I was writing and I was drawn. I would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and sit there and just doing dots on a piece of paper with my eyes shut. And the next thing you know, the first thing I ever did was this picture of this alien.
Right.
And then I started typing. Oh my God, I never typed in my life. I did reams upon reams upon reams of typing.
And what were you typing? Was it just
information on all sorts, everything from life, the universe and everything, scientific formulas, how engines work.
And you didn't know anything about that before?
No.
This was all coming out of you?
I'm innumerate. I mean, I'm not the world's most educated person.
And also you believe that some kind of experimentation went on?
Yeah. Well, I had a small, well, I still carry it. I've got a small V-shaped scar, which I never had before. I've got other scars. There's one on my back, which is where an object's obviously been inserted. I've got one very, very low down below in a rather personal place, which is a long scar, and they were not there before.
God, that's extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. And you are firmly convinced that this happened to you?
Well, I seem to have established enough proof. I mean, I was not the type of person. I had my own apartment. I wasn't going to be sitting in the back of a car doing what things people do with their boyfriends down a dark lane. You know, because I've got my apartment for things like that. I've got a whole ream of proof.
Ros, how has it affected you now, though?
Well, I've gone through doubting myself. I've gone through thinking I'm gone mad. At the time, there was no such people as like Bufora who have a counselling service and things like that. There was just nobody at the time, so you just have to go through it. You just bottle it up, and you just sit there and look at it and see information. Think, I am going nuts, or where is this coming from?
Well, Jenny, is this? And it's very unusual, but I mean, you do an awful lot of research in here. Yes. How common is the experience that we've heard about?
remarkably common. You wouldn't believe how many people have had an experience like this, and also how consistent it is all over the world. The first thing I want to say is that it would be difficult for people out there who've not gone through this, or don't have someone in their family who's had this experience, to accept the reality and the terrifying, traumatic reality of this experience, because that's what it is. It doesn't matter how we interpret it. The fact is that these people go through an experience which they can't understand, and they're not fantasy prone. That's a theory which some people have had for a long time. We've done a number of experiments now which have effectively ruled that out. They're also not people who are believing in UFOs and waiting on hilltops for them to arrive. These come from a wide cross-section of the population. They don't want this to happen to them. They wish it never had happened to them. It just simply has. And we owe it to ourselves as a society to try and figure this out, treat them with sympathy and work out what's going on here.
What are the aliens after?
Well, of course, we mustn't run before we can jump here. We have to find an explanation for what's happening, and we take that step by step. We accept that there's something strange. We accept that these people are telling stories which they believe have happened to them, and then we piece together what has occurred. There certainly is some supporting evidence that there is an alien intelligence behind these experiences, but that's an extreme conclusion to reach, and you have to obviously find the real hard evidence to prove it.
Well, thank you both very, very much indeed. It is absolutely fascinating. And we shall talk to you both later on. Thank you very much.
Okay. It was eerie. And we both remember getting out of the car to fiddle around with the bonnet. Couldn't find anything wrong with the engine.
Now, our next guest, Ros Reynolds, believes she was actually abducted by aliens. Now, this is how her fateful night began when she and her boyfriend set off to visit friends in Norfolk, some 2 hours' drive away from where she lived.
It was just starting to get dark. As we were driving along, a bank of horseshoe-shaped lights suddenly came from my side where I was sitting in the passenger seat. And it zipped over the top of us about 2 or 3 times. And then it eventually settled to match our speed. It was like a big white ball. You could see into it. It was very bright, but it didn't hurt your eyes to look at. And suddenly the car stopped dead. It was like in the middle of nowhere, and it was just sitting there. It hadn't landed. It was just like hovering, floating. There was no sound, no wind, no noise. It was eerie. And we both remember getting out of the car to fiddle around with the bonnet. Couldn't find anything wrong with the engine. We continued the journey. It suddenly just shot heavenwards. We finally got to friends. They'd been expecting us at 10 o'clock, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. But it was what happened afterwards that I realised it was something else going on.
Well, that was the reconstruction. Ros is now with us in the studio to tell us about that experience, together with Jenny Randalls. And Jenny is Britain's foremost expert on UFOs. Ros, you've never actually gone public before with this and spoken in public. Why now?
I think it's basically because the public look at it as something crazy, something weird. They can't see it, they can't touch it, they can't feel it, so therefore they look at you as though you're ready for the funny farm.
Just going back to your story on that particular night, what can you remember about being inside the spacecraft?
Oh, I remember the feelings, I remember the smells, I remember being frightened.
And what did these things look like?
Of the beings?
Yeah.
They were small, about 3'6", large head, big eyes. I always remember the eyes. And then there was another being much taller with blonde wispy hair.
Is this your actual sketch? Where did this sketch come from?
That came almost immediately after the event. I woke up in, well, I didn't exactly wake up. I got up in the middle of the night and I sat there with my eyes shut doing dots. When I woke up the next morning, there it was. And I've got several more pictures like that. All I do is dots. I just sit there and just doing dots on a piece of paper, and that's what comes out.
Ros, how has this changed your life?
Well, at first you go through fear, disbelief in yourself, belief that you're mad. The problem is out there was nobody you can talk to. It's not like you've had a car accident or you've had something happen to you in Vietnam and you got backup. You just cannot talk to people because their immediate reaction is you're crazy. I've had to actually go through and cope with it myself. I spent 3 years locked away.
Yes.
Eventually I had
You
to
can't
come
really
out.
sort of go to your doctor and say, "Doctor, excuse me, my nerves are bad, I've been taken away by spacemen."
That's right.
Yeah. Jenny, from your investigations, how unique was Ros's experience?
I think she's very brave to talk about it, and I think people should understand that this is not someone who is strange or bizarre, trying to get attention. She is going through a nightmare, just reliving and telling this experience. But it is not unique. There are people like this all over the world who've gone through almost identical experiences, who know nothing about other stories. They don't read UFO books or watch science fiction films. This is something that's happened to them out of the blue. They wish it never had happened.
Yeah. Now, Ros, experimentation took place, and you've got the scars to prove it on your body. You actually think, though, at its most extreme, that you may have given birth to an alien being, or
possibly. There is that possibility. I believe that they are doing some kind of genetic experimentation. They look upon us basically as just some kind of experiment. That's the feeling that I get inside. They're not here to be nasty, or they don't look at us as animals or anything like that. They're just curious in us.
And Jenny, if anyone else feels that they've gone through Ros's experience, that this has happened to them, and naturally enough they assume, you know, people will laugh at them or whatever, what's your advice to them?
I think it helps them to talk about it, to bottle it up inside of you. It stays there like a time bomb, and it can really destroy your life if you're not careful. It's much easier to share it with others. There are people who've gone through this experience. You're not alone. There will be people who will listen sympathetically to you.
Come
to us,
people?
Talk to us. You can certainly talk to me. If you contact the television company here, they'll be happy to put you in touch with me, and we'll make sure that you're listened to by someone who will take your story seriously.
I actually found somebody through the public library and through a newspaper article. So possibly the libraries could probably put you through to Bufora.
UFO experts.
Yeah.
I know it was painful for you to talk. I'm sorry we haven't had more time, because I know it was painful for you to actually watch that reconstruction. But Ros and Jenny, fascinating story. Thank you for telling it to us.